guys, the Comics Kid 2099 here. Today, I want to talk to you about a movie called The Hustle, starring Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson. This movie came out in 2019, I believe. As of me filming this video, it is available for free on Amazon Prime, and this is the third version of this story in film. There was a movie in the 1960s called Bedtime Story with Marlon Brando. I have not seen that movie. And then in the 80s, there was Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, starring Michael Caine and Steve Martin. I've seen this many times. This is a longtime favorite of mine. And then there's The Hustle. All three of these movies are the same basic story, I believe. Like I said, have not seen Bedtime Story, so I don't know how closely The Hustle and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels follows the plot of that movie. But I am going to talk a little bit about The Hustle, kind of do a little bit of a compare and contrast thing with Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. So spoilers for both of those movies, and I'm assuming spoilers for Bedtime Story. So in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Michael Caine is a high society con man. He finds women and then gets hundreds of thousands of dollars from them in these little cons. And he lives in this nice mansion somewhere in France, I think. And he enjoys taking advantage of these women. And then Steve Martin kind of rolls into town. And Steve Martin is a much less accomplished con man. He thinks it's a job well done if he's able to get $50 from a woman. And Michael Caine is afraid that Steve Martin is going to come in, make a lot of noise, and he's going to make it more difficult for Michael Caine to take advantage of his marks. So Michael Caine wants Steve Martin out of there. But Steve Martin basically accidentally finds out that Michael Caine is also a con man, and so he says, okay, I'm not leaving, because if you try to force me to leave, I'm going to tell everyone who you are. And eventually, they say, okay, there's not enough room in this town for both of us, so let's find a mark, and let's see which one of us can get, I think, $50,000 from her first. And then they find this woman. I cannot remember the actress's name. She died a few years ago. She played Ben Wyatt's mom in Parks and Recreation. They both say, okay, we're each going to try and get $50,000 from her. And then over the course of the movie, hilarity ensues. I won't tell you the ending just yet. I'll get to that a little bit in a minute. So in The Hustle, you have Anne Hathaway playing the Michael Caine character. She is the high-class, very good at being a con artist person. And then you have Rebel Wilson playing the not as good at it Steve Martin role. And it's basically a scene-for-scene remake. It's not doing a shot-for-shot, everything is exactly the same remake. You've probably heard of those where you have to wonder what was even the point of doing a remake if you're not going to change anything. It's not that bad, but watching The Hustle, because I had seen Dirty Rotten Scoundrels so many times, I felt like, okay, I know exactly where this is going. I didn't feel like I was surprised any. It's like if you wake up on Christmas morning and you're not excited because you have x-ray vision and you already know what presents you're going to get. That's kind of how I felt watching The Hustle. Now, I still think this is a very entertaining movie. Every time it is able to divert slightly from what Dirty Rotten Scoundrels did, I found myself really entertained. And I think if you have not seen Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, if you have made it this far in a video and you are unfamiliar with the plot of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, if you don't know anything about this movie, you are probably going to enjoy this movie a lot more than I did, because I have seen Dirty Rotten Scoundrels so many times. And I'm not trying to say that this remake ruined Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. That's not possible, because even if this movie was really bad, and I don't think it is, then we still have Dirty Rotten Scoundrels that we can go back and watch as many times as we want. I don't think that The Hustle is bad. I think that it is a very competent remake of this story. The problem is, I felt like it was doing pretty much exactly the same thing, and it's not until close to the very end of the movie that it starts to shake things up a little bit. And there are times where it will do something somewhat different, but it's still following the same basic structure. For example, in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Steve Martin is pretending to be crippled. And then he is trying to play on the Mark's sympathy for him being crippled. And then Michael Caine comes in playing this world-famous doctor who can help him because his being crippled is psychosomatic. He says this guy, he could just just get out of the chair if he really wanted to. And so in The Hustle, Rebel Wilson, she's not pretending to be crippled, she's instead pretending to be blind. And there is this really funny scene in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels where Michael Caine has this reed or a whip or something, and he goes up and he starts like hitting Steve Martin's foot really hard. And then he's like, you can't feel that, can you? And then the look on Steve Martin's face is priceless. And as soon as Rebel Wilson walked into this casino pretending to be blind, I said out loud, oh, okay, they're not going to do the thing where she hits her in the foot with the whip thing. And then they do something that's pretty similar, but it's different. But they're playing for her pretending to be blind. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's fun. It's similar to what that one scene in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels was, but it's also a little bit different. But like I said, at the end of the movie, that's when things really start to be noticeably different, while still also kind of maintaining the same premise as Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. So spoilers now for the end of The Hustle and for Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. So in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, we find out near the very end of the movie that the woman that Michael Caine and Steve Martin were trying to get money from, she is also a con artist, and she is in fact better than both of them because she got $50,000 from Michael Caine and she stole $50,000 from Steve Martin. And then at the end of the movie, she brings a whole bunch of people back to Michael Caine's house, and she is pretending to be in real estate, I think. And then she says, hey, here's so-and-so and so-and-so. They're my business partners. And then they all go into the house, and then she tells Michael Caine and Steve Martin, hey, I stole money from you guys, but we all had a lot of fun. Let's work together. We can all make a lot of money doing this. In The Hustle, since they have gender flipped pretty much everyone in the movie, Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson say, okay, let's get some money from that guy over there who just fell in the pool. And they find out he is a con man. He made this app called Ya Burnt, which is, I guess, kind of like Snapchat, except it involves insults. And so then they're saying, okay, let's see which one of us can get $500,000 from that guy. And then Rebel Wilson starts to actually fall for him. And in this movie, they actually introduce a thread that is not in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Near the very beginning of the movie, when we first meet Rebel Wilson, she is going to meet this guy on a date, and she presented a picture that is not her on the dating website. And then when she goes to meet him face to face, he is very rude, saying that she's not a very attractive woman. And so then she says, well, since he's being kind of a scumbag, I don't feel bad about taking money from him. And then she tells Anne Hathaway, all these guys, they treat me like dirt because I am not what they're looking for, conventionally attractive, I guess you could say. But this guy that we are trying to take money from, he doesn't look at me like all the others do. And so she starts to actually fall for him. And then Anne Hathaway says, okay, instead of us taking money from him, let's see which one of us can sleep with him first. And then we pretty much get the ending of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, except we flip everything, because in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Steve Martin thinks that he is going to be able to sleep with the Mark, and then we cut to her meeting Michael Caine, and he says, hey, I want to give you some money to help you, I think your grandmother is sick, or something like that. I want to give you some money to help you with your grandmother. And then she goes away in a plane, and Steve Martin runs in a bath towel, and he says, she took my clothes and she stole money from me. And then they both figure out, oh, okay, she's a con artist. And then in The Hustle, they flip it, because Rebel Wilson, she is kind of feeling self-conscious about her looks. And so she can't be the one to be humiliated by this guy. So instead, Anne Hathaway, she is really hard flirting with this guy, and then he turns off the lights, and then we cut to Rebel Wilson. She realizes, oh, okay, they slept together, so I lost a bet, I need to leave town. And then she sees off the guy at the airport, and then she gives him $500,000 to help his sick Nana, and then he flies away, and then Anne Hathaway comes in the bathrobe, and then she says, no, he took money from me, stole my clothes. So they're flipping it. Instead of I guess the snob, this is your classic snobs versus slobs movie. Instead of the slob being humiliated and coming in the bathrobe, it's the snob who comes in, because they have already introduced this thread that Rebel Wilson feels self-conscious. And then they want to kind of tie all that up at the end. And so after these two, they realize they've both been had by this guy. Then Rebel Wilson is about to leave Anne Hathaway's place, and then the Mark comes back. He has people. He says, hey, I've got this real estate thing going on. These are my partners. And then also in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Janet the Jackal, she says, this is Randy, pointing to Steve Martin, and Randy, unfortunately, is a mute, meaning that for the rest of this con, Steve Martin is not going to be able to speak. And then in The Hustle, he comes in, and then he says, this is Rebel Wilson, she's from South Africa, and this is Anne Hathaway, and she had her tongue ripped out by an alligator a long time ago. So Anne Hathaway is mute. Again, they're flipping the script on the snobs versus slobs thing just a little bit. And then all the people go in for ice cream, and he says, hey, I took money from both of you, but we had fun doing it, so let's keep doing it. Let's work together. And then they also say, oh, and by the way, Rebel Wilson and this guy are going to live happily ever after. They are now a couple, because he says, I lied about a lot of things, but I never lied about the way you look. I don't think that, I do think you're a very attractive woman. So it's calling back to that thing where all these guys that Rebel Wilson is stealing money from, they all think that she is unattractive, and so she doesn't have to feel bad about it, but this guy, he said, I do think you're attractive. And then we cut forward, I think, 6 months, and this is where, again, we're getting a little bit off the beaten path that was blazed by Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and then we kind of get a callback to a scene at the very beginning of the movie where Rebel Wilson was hiding from some police officers. Now, Rebel Wilson and Anne Hathaway are working together, and then they walk off into the sunset with the guy, and then he and Rebel Wilson are flirting with each other. And like I said, if you have never seen Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, you are probably going to get a big kick out of this movie. I got a big kick out of it when it was doing something different that Dirty Rotten Scoundrels had not done. Anytime there was a joke that was a little bit new, or it was shaking things up a little bit from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, I found myself enjoying the movie a lot more. But there were many scenes in the movie where I would say to myself, oh, okay, we're at this point in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, so here's what's going to happen next. Also, it's a little weird. The tagline for this movie was something to the effect of, these women are going to get those dirty, rotten men back, and then spoilers, that's not what happens. This guy actually takes advantage of the women, and so the inherent premise that women are just as good at being con artists as men is kind of thrown away immediately if you know the premise of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, because whenever you see, even the trailer makes it pretty clear, oh, this is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, then you start to say, oh, so that means that Janet the Jackal is actually going to be a guy here. And then if the tagline says, these women are going to get those dirty, rotten men back, and then at the end, no, they don't, that's a little weird. And honestly, I mean, both of these movies are probably a little problematic because they're trying to make you like these con artists. In Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, it's a couple of men who are taking advantage of a sweet little lady who wouldn't hurt a fly, and her grandmother is sick, and you are not supposed to be rooting for these guys, but at the same time, you're caught up in how hilarious it is, and, oh, he got that guy back, and then he turned around and got him back. And so you find yourself getting caught up in it, and then at the end, you're like, oh, it's okay because she got them back. Here, it's kind of weird because you see how awful these guys are that Rebel Wilson is talking to, and so you're like, yeah, I want to see them get these guys back. And then you're like, oh, they're taking advantage of this sweet little guy, and it's weird because here, Rebel Wilson knows that he is a tech billionaire who invented Ya Burnt, but then at the end, it turns out he's a con artist. So I'm confused. Did he actually invent Ya Burnt, or did he create this persona of someone who invented a app that doesn't actually exist just so that he can be a con artist here wherever Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson are? I was really confused about that. In the 1980s, when you don't have apps and Snapchat and stuff like that, you can have a character like invent a persona for themselves, like Dr. Emil Schopausen. That's what Michael Caine kind of invents for himself. And you don't have the internet, so you can't do a lot of quick checking to see if Dr. Emil Schopausen exists. But in The Hustle, I was under the impression Rebel Wilson knew who that guy was pretty early on, and so I don't know how that works. Did he actually invent an app to help him con all these people, or is that something he did just for this job? That was a little confusing. Overall, I think The Hustle is fine. I think that it's not a bad movie. You see a lot of people who get really upset when a movie they like that had a mostly male cast is then reinvented with a mostly lady cast. I have not seen Ocean's 8. As I understand it, I think that's actually a follow-up / sequel to the George Clooney Ocean's movies and not a full-blown remake, but You have Ocean's 8, you have the Lady Ghostbusters movie, and then you have The Hustle. A lot of people really did not like the Lady Ghostbusters movie. I don't think that The Hustle is a bad movie. I think it is a perfectly fine movie, very entertaining, but I do wish that it had tried to be a little bit less of a remake. Try to do something a little bit more new here. And it does in a few places. And in those places, I was like, hey, I like what it's doing here. I just wish it had done a little bit more of that. So those are my thoughts on The Hustle. I hope you guys like this video, and I will see you guys in the future with more videos. In the meantime, have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.